everyone, and thank you so much for waking up with me on Up with India. Today, I will be joined by Charles Vincent, the Executive Director of Spur Impact, a Delaware nonprofit whose mission is to connect and inspire young professionals to make an impact in their career and the community. Charlie manages a large team of volunteers and together with the Spur Impact Board of Directors leads the efforts to make the Spur Impact initiatives and events such as the Mill Summit, Leadership Conference, and Delaware Charity Challenge fundraising competition possible. I've had the opportunity to participate in the last two Mill Summits, and I am very happy to have Charlie on the show to talk more about the work he does and the initiatives that are impacting lives here in the state of Delaware and beyond. Welcoming him on the show now. Charlie, how are you?
Hi, good morning, India. Thanks for having me here.
Good morning. Happy to have you. As I was saying before, I've got the opportunity to work alongside of you in the initiative that you created, the Mill Summit, and that was one of our first introductions with each other. So ever since then, it's been a pleasure. Really happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's great, and thanks for all your support. It's been wonderful, and I've certainly been following the Up with India since you started, and you've had some great people on there. So even this week with Logan, he was one of our keynotes at the Mill Summit this past year, and he's certainly been involved as well.
Exactly. And it's so funny because we were talking about that piece that we spent some time together during the Mill Summit where I was able to interview Logan. Really enjoyed that. Even though the Mill Summit was virtual this year, you guys still found a way to make it possible. So that was awesome. So
yeah.
Let's get right into things, Charlie. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know that you're a very busy person. So the fact that you're here with me today means so much to me and our viewers. Let's talk about how you even got into the work that you do, because you used to be an attorney, you used to work in law. So how did you make the transition over to what you are doing now?
Yeah, well, I'm still a lawyer. I still hold my license. I just don't practice anymore. But certainly, I did corporate litigation for a number of years, and really got into the nonprofit sector because I was volunteering in a pro bono capacity with the Combined Campaign for Justice, which raises money for Community Legal Aid and Legal Services Corp. And Delaware Volunteer Legal Services, which really does a lot of the civil pro bono legal services for the low income community throughout the state. And so that's really dealing with really getting different benefits, dealing with landlord-tenant issues, just the gambit of civil legal services that really is necessary. So that sort of got my initial sort of foray into the nonprofit community here in Delaware, and I certainly still do a lot of work or volunteer work with them or support them in different ways. And then from there, I really just really just expanded the network, and sort of once I dove into the nonprofit sector, really tried to figure out different ways to help and get other people like me or even people who are generally interested in the nonprofit sector really connected.
Did you see this early on in your career that you would be in the nonprofit sector, or was this something that evolved over time through the work that you were doing?
No, it evolved over time. I mean, I've always enjoyed networking and meeting new people and seeing how I can help. And really once I really got into the nonprofit sector, saw that there were a lot of young professionals, not only in the legal sector, but across the board who were sort of like me. They were interested in doing more and just didn't know how to get started. And so once I sort of got into this, really dove into the nonprofit sector, it was really just finding more and more that people, they want to do more to impact their community. They want to do more for, to help their career, their personal network, or really just the larger community they live in. And so it's been fun sort of meeting people, who have different career paths or different interests and just seeing how we can help.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you originally from Delaware, Charlie?
I am. So I grew up in Kent County and went to Lake Forest High School and graduated a number of years ago now. And then I've been in Delaware pretty much my whole life. I went to school in Pennsylvania at Franklin and Marshall and worked there for a couple years after graduating, and then came back to Delaware for law school and have been here ever since.
Now, the type of law that you decided to practice is very specific, and it's specific to community. When you could have gotten into corporate law, entertainment law, any type of law, why did you choose this specific option? when it came to law school? Was helping people always a part of your passion project in life?
It was. So I was a corporate lawyer and litigator for my entire legal career. The helping out with the certainly I represented kids through the Office of Child Advocacy. All that was pro bono. So that was really in my spare time. And I think a lot of lawyers, most of the bar, certainly in Delaware, represents young children who are either in the foster care system or are in often terrible situations and need some representation that keeps their interests at heart. So I think that sort of got me into the nonprofit sector, and then from there just expanded what I was interested in and brought me to where I am today.
For those that don't know what Spur Impact is, if you could share a little bit more about that and why it's important to the community here in Delaware.
Sure. So Spur Impact is a 501c3 nonprofit here in Delaware, where we operate largely out of Wilmington and Newcastle County, but certainly the community expands, to both Kent and Sussex, and we do a lot of stuff that impacts the entire state. So our primary two initiatives are the Mill Summit Initiative, or the Mill Summit Conference, which is a young professional development conference that focuses on sort of inspiring professionals up and down the spectrum and geographically to get more involved and learn more about how to get more involved. And then our other big initiative is the Delaware Gives platform, which is really a way to have anybody raise money for nonprofits they support throughout the state. And then the Delaware Charity Challenge is one facet of that, in that we organize a couple, well, in pre-COVID times anyway, helped put together a couple different fun athletic competitions that help different groups raise money for nonprofits they supported.
And I want to get into both of them in different ways, but I want to start with the Mill Summit since that's what you led with. I am very interested by how the Mill Summit kind of came together. And before we get into the details of that, did you have any challenges in your career as you were building as a young professional that arise that kind of stuck out to you when you were developing this plan for the Mill Summit, and that you wanted to make sure other young people didn't go through?
Yeah, so I think in the very beginning, and this was, now a little more than 5 years ago, I had met Robert Herrera, who runs the mill and is certainly doing a lot of things in the entrepreneurship and business community, and Robert and I have been friends for a long time now. So both him and I were doing different things, him in the entrepreneurship sector, me in the nonprofit sector, and we both sort of realized that one thing that was missing in Delaware was really a way to connect these different young professional groups. So at the time, there were probably, and there's still probably 30 different young professional groups, or groups that have young professional arms up and down the state. And they're all probably 10 or 15 people strong and doing great things within the scope of their respective missions. And so the one thing that we were interested in was coming up with a way to bring them all together and sort of aggregate resources and really start pushing the needle and getting things done. And so the initial kind of thought was, could we create some type of Forbes conference for young professionals in Delaware? And sort of from there, we met with the leadership of a lot of different organizations and sort of said, hey, if your group wants to get involved, we'd love to have you. We're trying to do this. And really in less than 6 months pulled off the first Mill Summit. And I think that had, somewhere between 250 and 300 people the first year. And then we continued to expand it and doubled, kind of year over year. And this past August really had to convert it virtually. So the evolution of the Mill Summit really led to the formation of the Spur Impact nonprofit. And then from there, we've really expanded sort of concurrently into the young professional development space and sort of how to get these young professionals really plugged into the nonprofit community space. And so largely we do that through the Giving Day, which takes place coming up in March.
So the Mill Summit essentially became a hub of all of these different various organizations that were already doing the work, but it was just like, okay, let's kind of join arms. Let's bring each other together to see what we need, what we need help with. How can we move forward together? How can we better each other? Okay, so that's very interesting. So talk to me about some of the organizations that are actually a part of the Mill Summit every year when it's hosted.
Yeah, so we've had usually we have representation from most of the groups who are actually on the planning committee, and have different members from their organizations participate. So we've had let me think. Well, certainly Metropolitan Urban League Young Professionals in Eugene has been involved since the beginning. Logan and the Warehouse and Reach Riverside and Kingswood have been involved in the beginning. But we also have Next Gen South, which is part of DCF. We've had the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals, Junior League of Wilmington, just to name a few, and a lot of the companies here in Delaware have a young professional arm or different affinity group arms, and we have volunteers from those organizations join the planning committee, and we have sort of different, we have sort of a leadership committee, a nonprofit committee, a community impact committee, and a lot of different ways that these groups work together and put together interesting and relevant panel discussions. And so a lot of the volunteers from those groups sort of join our planning committee and really help develop the Mill Summit Conference. And then throughout the year, we try and spotlight the work that these groups are doing in different ways. So for example, Delaware Community Foundation next month is bringing Wes Moore as their annual keynote. And so we've been promoting that out and helping that. And certainly within the nonprofit sector, there's a lot of CARES money that's been going out. So we've been helping promote the work that DCF and United Way and Dana and Philanthropy Delaware have been doing.
Now, what would you say has been the most frustrating part of kind of pulling this whole thing together? Sometimes we do talk about the great things, but there's the work that goes in behind the scenes that people just don't know about. And what would you say are some of those things that come up and you're just like, I don't know if we're going to be able to get this done?
Yeah, well, it's always a lot of herding cats, and we've got a lot of dovetailing interests, and a lot of it. So a lot of the work I do is trying to listen and hear what some of these groups are doing and figuring out how best we can highlight that, whether it's at the conference or at other times of the year, and really just help empower people to get connected to organizations. So I think I would say certainly in the last few months, the coronavirus has really created the biggest headache, and for us, it's really how do you convert sort of in-person events to virtual. And so we've sort of really developed an interesting experience and skill set as that goes. And we've certainly have been working with a lot of nonprofits and helping them think about the best way to take their in-person events online, or really can get their message pushed out digitally and through social media channels. So I'd say that's certainly been the biggest headache, and it's always it's always fun to sort of get a variety of groups together and get them thinking in a common path and about the best way that they can deploy their resources and volunteers forward.
Mm-hmm. What would you say are some of the top issues that young professionals face and that they come to the Mill Summit for?
Yeah, so I would say one of them for sure is there's a lot of groups, whether they're lawyers or doctors or in the banking space, or working for nonprofits. They're looking to do something beyond what they're paid for, and so a lot of times it's that they just don't know where to start. So you have a group that's like, hey, I'd be interested in helping, for example, with a diversity and inclusion topic, and so there's a lot of groups focused on that right now, as they should be, and so it's just trying to figure out how to get that information out. And so you have different volunteers at different organizations who are interested in that work, and they just don't know how to get involved with it. So sometimes it's sharing information, sometimes it's promoting panels, sometimes it's helping plan those panels. And so a lot of times I'll get calls or emails from people who work in the area or live in the area, and they're like, hey, I'm interested in social justice, or I'm interested in animals, and I'd love to do more to do that, and how do I get started? And so a lot of times it's just plugging those groups or those individuals in with groups that are already in that space, or just making the introduction over email or over Zoom and going from there. So I think there's a lot of groups that are just looking, or a lot of individuals, they just don't know where to start, and so we try at least get them plugged in and sort of are the hub group that connects a lot of disparate groups across the state.
And the Mill Summit, as we know, is short for Millennial. But what are the age group of those that attend? Although there's a focus of who the demographic is that you'd like to attract, but what are the age groups of the people that actually attend the Mill Summit every year?
Right. So the Mill Summit, most of the attendees, and I would say 70 to 75%, fall within 25 and 40. They're largely in Delaware, although we do get a number of national attendees now coming in from different states. So that'd be the core, and I would say that of most of our community and network, it's in that sort of 25 to 40 age range. So we do get a lot that are sort of 1 or 2 years out of college, or have been working. That's their first job, 1 or 2 years in, and they're looking for ways to, become more relevant in their work, get sort of figure out how to navigate that sort of the work politics of the world, and meet their counterparts at other organizations, and that helps from a business development standpoint, helps from a networking standpoint. I mean, sometimes it helps from a personal standpoint. So it's so a lot of times it's people in that age range, but we do work with a number of people who are older and many that are younger, and they're looking. It's an interesting workforce nowadays. Most companies, they have 5 different generations who are working, and it's sort of trying to navigate. The generational divide is a challenge for both the nonprofit and the for-profit sector. So a lot of times we're bringing in sort of interesting practices that different businesses are doing, and just showcasing that so people can learn about it and perhaps import some of those best practices into their own work.
Any advice to companies, nonprofits, anyone on how to bridge that generational divide that oftentimes creates issues in the workplace for people?
Yeah, so I'd say the communication is certainly the key, and sort of listening to the next generation, and some of the ideas are really interesting. Certainly from a tech perspective, 7 months ago, people hadn't heard most people hadn't realized anything about Zoom or video conferencing, and now it's pretty commonplace. And I think there are some silver linings that are going to come out of the pandemic. I think one of them is going to be that certainly video conferencing technology gets a lot more access, and people can they're not necessarily geographically bound to getting access to this information anymore. For example, I was able to Zoom into a conference in California last week, and it was great. I got to hear some really world-class keynotes, and similarly, a lot of people from around the country have been able to Zoom into our conference in August and sort of get the not exactly the same experience being in person, but from a content and networking perspective, you're able to hear from some really great speakers, and many of which are local here. I mean, and the more we can do that, I think the more it sort of changes the conversation and helps get good ideas out there to people who are up and coming in their own business.
I definitely had a great time with the virtual conference, but you're right, it's nothing like the in person. I mean, that first year that the Mill Summit was put together, you had some heavy hitters on the stage, some leaders within the community, leaders within professional spaces, leaders within government. Talk to me about how some of those people that you brought together to kick off the Mill Summit and really set the tone for what it has become.
Yeah, so we've every year our committee has really prided itself on finding a diverse array of speakers and the spectrum, whether we're in the government or in the private sector or the nonprofit sector. So I think the first year, we had 2 keynotes the first year, and so one was Sarah Fisher, who was a reporter with Axios, which is certainly continues to be one of a big online news source, and she had come over to Axios from CNN. And we also had the ambassador from Kosovo to the U.S., who at the time and was the youngest female ambassador to the U.S. in the world. So that was really interesting. And you got people who are doing things in their career that just people haven't heard about. And every year since then, we've had some really great keynotes. And obviously this year Logan Herring was one of our keynotes, and we had John Henry, who was another one, and both of them are doing really fascinating things within their space. And it was great to be able to showcase what they're doing and bring their message out to a much wider audience. And so hopefully in 2021, we'll be able to do the conference at least as a hybrid in person and virtual experience, and really whoever the keynotes wind up being. And we're always looking for good speakers. We're always looking for good panelists, and you never know. So hopefully by August next year, some part of it will be able to be brought back in person, and really we'll be able to dive in to sort of this hybrid format.
And that was trying to say, if you are a good speaker, submit, send them an email, because I'm sure they'd love to look into your background and what you do to see if they could possibly be a speaker, right?
Oh yeah, we have on our website, so millsummit.com. There's a speaker forum, and people can submit to be a speaker, and then that kind of gets vetted down at the committee level, and then from there, the committee works hard. Really, the planning process for 2021 has already started, and those committees really work to kind of vet different speakers and different topics, and really try and bring the best experience they can to the attendees and beyond. And we do, and similarly, we try and spotlight different speakers at other events throughout the year. So a lot of times we might get somebody who may or may not be able to speak in August, but we're able to spotlight them or get them in front of a different group who's able to bring them in at some other time of the year. So we really try and stay relevant throughout the year. If not just for our conference, but for a lot of the groups that have been helping around the table, they're doing events throughout the year, and the more we can help them, the better it is for the bigger Delaware community.
I like that you utilize a message of inspiration throughout the Mill Summit, and oftentimes you utilize speakers that do have interesting stories to tell of overcoming tragedy or trauma or just life happenstances. Talk to me about some of those individuals that you have utilized. I'm talking about the Devin Stills and the Ketchies of the world that were a part of the summit.
Yeah, well, so Devin Still was a keynote in our second year of the conference, and he grew up in Newcastle County. Local boy, did great, and certainly still has connections to the state. I think if you find his story's pretty available online, but I know his daughter had a bout with cancer, and really he took a pause with his NFL career to take care of that, and she recovered. And is still doing great. And so there's an example we were able to highlight somebody local who's went on to have a national career, and now he does a lot on the public speaking side. He obviously was a pro NFL player for several years, and his story resonated with the audience. And I think he had said that this was the first time at the Mill Summit that he had ever come back to Delaware to speak.
Wow.
And last year we had Ketchi Akuchi, who was on America's Got Talent, and had went in I think in high school, she was in a plane crash, and a lot of her classmates were killed, and she survived, and now has really become an advocate for burn victims, and travels to different hospitals throughout the country, and helps inspire those often children and other people who are just suffering in different ways, and provides inspiration. So we really try and find different speakers each year that can inspire in different ways, and sometimes it's a keynote, sometimes it's a panel. A lot of times the panels are more sort of career focused or professional development focused, but we do have a lot of entrepreneurs who are doing great things. Particularly in the mental health space, we've always tried to spotlight that issue, because that's certainly a big one in different ways. And hopefully this coming year we'll be able to spotlight that. We have a health fair coming up in January, so that'll sort of be typically that's like more of a trade show health fair, but this year it'll probably be more Mill Summit, just in that it'll have to be online.
Yeah, typically the summit was held at the Chase Center. This year it was held virtually. Talk to me about how the virtual event went. Was it to your liking? Did you feel like it was successful in the way that you did what you could with what you had?
Yeah, so I have I've spent a lot of time over the past few months just looking at different virtual platforms. I think the feedback from our event, it was pretty successful. I know a lot of nonprofits are trying to figure out the best way to go online. Certainly, being able to simulcast from something like Zoom to Facebook has been helpful for a lot of groups.
You guys used it, right?
What is it?
You guys used an app.
Yeah, we used an app. Attendify was the company that we used for ours, and that I found continues to be a great platform. And so apps are expensive, so I think for a lot of groups, it's trying to figure out what's the best cost, versus what they're trying to accomplish. And sometimes it's an app, and those apps can get very expensive. Don't get me wrong; the cost of those apps can be insanely expensive, and so they don't work for every group. And it really comes down to sort of what they're trying to get out of it. And a lot of times, trying to figure out the best user experience, sometimes it's an app, sometimes it's an aggregate of YouTube or Facebook or Zoom videos, and sometimes it's just going on Facebook Live or Instagram Live or Twitch or or any of these social media platforms, and just trying to get the message out. So a lot of times it just depends on the organization and what they're trying to do. But the feedback for us is our app did pretty well and handled what we were trying to do and really created a meaningful online experience for that. And I think if you look on Technically, Delaware wrote up a nice article talking about the app experience, and certainly a lot of groups have been using apps, and I suspect will continue to be using apps to deliver their content for the foreseeable future.
And so you did let me know that in the 2021 Summit, you're hoping that it will be a split between both in person and virtual. Have you guys already started planning for it? And what are some things that people can expect?
Yeah, so the planning for that is underway, and it takes a year to plan an event like that, and usually more than a year. Especially with some of the keynotes that we've been trying to get. So I think with I would imagine we've used the Attendify app, and it's you can download the Mill Summit app to your phone for 4 years, and they've been great. And so I suspect we'll still use an app again, in 2021, and then really just encourage the attendees, whether they're in person or online, to use the app, and that's the best way to connect with the other attendees. And certainly for the ones who are able to attend in person, you get a much different experience. And so I suspect come August 2021, assuming we're able to do something in person and capacity, restrictions have been lifted, and people are more used to wearing masks, or knock on wood, we have some type of effective vaccine that people take, we'll be able to have a nice in-person experience and still be able to encourage those who either cannot or don't feel comfortable attending in person, still be able to get the content and some of the interactivity virtually.
Do you see the world changing anytime soon, or that soon, Charlie? Do you really think we may be able to go back to a sense of normalcy?
Well, I mean, I think I think the next few months are going to be tough for a lot of individuals, a lot of businesses. Certainly, the retail and hospitality and food and beverage sector have really been impacted and will continue to be impacted over the next few months. So, at least in conversations I've had, I don't think there's too many in-person events that are being planned before May of next year. And then so hopefully by the summer of 2021, people can start to feel comfortable doing something in person, and there's protocols in place that sort of help ease some of that comfort level. I think the next few months, particularly in the winter, it's going to be tough to do anything in person as far as events go. So I suspect, just based on the weather, a lot of the events over the next few months are just going to be just going to have to be done online. I think by the spring, April, May, you should be able to do some things in person potentially. Just a drawback is to plan for that. It often takes 3 to 6 or more months to plan something, and so it's very, with the uncertainty of what you'll be able to do in person, it just makes it hard to plan for an in-person event. And so you really have to be planning for something virtual likely in the first 2 quarters of next year, if I had to guess.
You've been successful in securing funding in order to continue going forward with the different initiatives that you have, and that's really, really awesome. But for those groups that are grassroots organizations and they may not have the access to the capital to be able to do that, what are some suggestions on how they can stay afloat during this season in the pandemic?
Yeah, well, certainly for nonprofits, I think the majority of money that's raised nationally is from individuals. So I think for any nonprofit, now's the time to really lean into your giving strategy and figure out the best way to approach individuals who support your mission and get them to support financially. Certainly, we have a platform, dgives.org, or the Delaware Gives platform, that allows nonprofits to raise money unrestricted from anybody, and they can just create a fundraising page and support. So that's part of the strategy. I think from a corporate and government perspective and foundation perspective, a lot of that's based on relationships, getting introductions, reaching out cold. I think there's a lot of debate now in the philanthropic sector of how best to deploy resources. Certainly, I've been advocating for more money to be distributed with less restrictions, and that way the smaller groups and the grassroots groups can really get money and use it, because a lot of these groups are working on food insecurity issues, or working on homelessness issues, and it's really, how do you get that money out to the community fast? And certainly the Newcastle County just yesterday won the auction to buy the Sheraton Hotel off of 95, and they're going to convert that, or at least the plans are to convert that into a homeless shelter and provide wraparound services into that. And that's going to really, I think, help some of those, certainly a lot of the homeless, be able to get someplace into a common shelter, and then more importantly, get access to resources they need without having to, drive all over, Newcastle County to get them. So I think that examples like that are really, really creative and innovative, and hopefully they'll be successful. And we should, the proverbial we should be supportive of ideas like that to really help move the needle. So, but I think in terms of like a startup, a grassroots nonprofit who's really just trying to do something for the greater good, some of it is you have to, just get the word out, and there's a lot of organizations that can help in different ways, and some of it's just pushing content online and getting it in front of as many people. I think from the corporate world, it's belts are going to be tightened over the next year or two or more, and I think again, if you look at from a national lens, most of the money that's coming into these organizations is coming from individuals, and that's been the case always. So I think it's really important to develop a robust individual giving strategy and figure out how to get that to work. But again, it's results. So you got to be able to show, here's what you're doing, here's how it's impacting, the community in a way that's consistent with your mission, and just get more people behind it. So certainly, I try and point as many as I can to you, India, so that way they can help get the word out about what they're doing, over, different ways. And the more creative people can get, the more people hear about what they're doing, and hopefully that'll convert in the long term to some type of donation or non-financial support.
Talk to me about one of your initiatives, the Delaware Charity Challenge, which could be looked at as a giving strategy of Spur Impact. Talk to me about how that was created and why it was created.
Yeah, so initially I had looked at, there's a lot of 5Ks or a lot of golf tournaments, and the thought was, if instead of everybody doing their own thing, they could come in as an aggregate behind one event, that would be more efficient, and they should raise more money. And that evolved into us developing this Delaware Gives platform, and then ultimately we worked with United Way and many others this past March and put together the statewide Giving Day event, and that we hope, that wound up raising close to $400,000 in 24 hours for almost 300 nonprofits up and down the state. So the hope is this coming year, and it'll be on March 4th and 5th, we'll come together again as a state, and individuals and corporates and businesses throughout the state will really, rally behind the philanthropic sector and donate a lot of money because these nonprofits will need it, and they do need it. So the more we can sort of help make it easy for nonprofits to raise money, the better. And so that led to the development of that platform, and hopefully it raises a lot more money come March. And certainly there's a lot of groups using it now to raise money at the end of the year. So I think as more people learn about it, I think they'll see it's a nice a nice turnkey system that makes it very easy to raise money, and we really cap our fees at 2.5%, which is really sort of trying to make it easy and for the nonprofits to get as much of the money as they can, from their individual supporters, so they can continue their mission.
Now, I know the goal is to raise as much as you can, but is there any specific number that you're looking at to hit this upcoming year, 2020?
Yeah, so last year we raised close to 400,000. So I think the official total in 24 hours was like 390,000 and a little bit. So $1 more than that, would be great, especially in a pandemic.
Right.
Certainly I think, it would be great to raise $500,000 or more, or maybe $1 million. I don't know. It would be great. So I think the hope is we'll be able to do some type of 24-hour live stream. And I'd love to talk to you more about sort of ways to get you involved with that. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas that are around the table right now, and the more we can kind of get the collective, philanthropic community around kind of a 24-hour day, the better, because I think that way it's not interrupting. It's more, it's part of their annual campaign, and it really can turn into a really big day. And if you look at some of the other states that are doing similar events, they're raising tens of millions of dollars in 24 hours, and that's really providing resources into the nonprofit sector, that they wouldn't get otherwise. So hopefully, one day we can be at that level. I would say for March 4th and 5th, 2021. If we can raise $500,000 or more, or certainly more than we did last year in 24 hours, that would be great. And last year we had, 60 or so thousand in different prize money that we were giving away to the participating nonprofits. I think our committee is really trying to get that number a lot bigger, and that certainly provides a meaningful carrot and a financial incentive for these nonprofits to really leverage the day and raise as much money as they can.
What do you think is the biggest barrier that stops nonprofits from learning about opportunities like this?
It's capacity is their biggest barrier. So every nonprofit needs more money. They need more help. I think one thing that we've been trying to think about is how we can kind of leverage the different universities, particularly with students who are working towards social media degrees or marketing majors or minors, and how to get them plugged into helping these nonprofits, so it sort of increases their capacity without increasing their cost. And so I think the major issue is that most nonprofits just don't have enough dedicated resources or staff that can really focus on marketing or fundraising. So they wind up wearing a lot of different hats. And that's not atypical of any nonprofit, but I think the more we can sort of think about this and leverage resources, and really help these nonprofits, to automate or take as much off of their plate so they can really concentrate on their mission and really deploy their existing resources as efficiently as possible, particularly in this pandemic economy, the better.
Talk to me about some of the things that you did note a little bit earlier that you do have coming up that's surrounding Spur Impact that people need to pay attention to and try to be a part of.
Sure. So our next big event that we do every year is an annual health fair. Typically, we hold that at the Chase Center. So last year, I think we had 80 or 90 different health professionals and companies on one side of the Chase Center, and then we had an indoor triathlon going on the other side as part of the charity challenge. So this year, obviously, we can't do either of those events in person. So the hope is we can really, from the health fair perspective, hold it as a virtual event and showcase, some health topics that we can host virtually, and then spotlight the exhibitors and sponsors, through that event. So that we should be, turning that on today or tomorrow and start promoting that really in December, leading up to it in January. So that'll be, I think, January 8th and 9th. It's usually the first weekend after New Year's. I think January 1st is a Friday this year, so it would be a week later. So that's the next big event. And then the Giving Day, so you can go to dgives.org or domore24delaware.org, and that'll be the pages that we really spotlight these nonprofits that are raising money. And that event will take place on March 4th and 5th, 2021, starting at 6 p.m. on the 4th, and it'll run 24 hours. And it's just a race to see how much money can be raised in that time. So it really, last year, I think we had a couple million impressions on social media about it. And so hopefully we exceed that this year. Certainly the pandemic's going to make things interesting, but the event's already largely virtual. So I think it's a lot of just aggregating as many different nonprofits as possible to think about how they can be delivering their event virtually for one day. And then the Mill Summit in 2021 will be in the beginning of August. I think the dates we're looking at are August 2nd through 4th. So certainly you've got 10 or 11 months away from that. So I'm sure we'll hopefully get a chance to talk more about that again, when it gets a little closer. But those are sort of, at least in the next few months, the health fair in January and the Giving Day in March are our next big things. So, and I would say if anybody wants to get involved or learn more, they can just go to the Spur Impact website and shoot us an email through that and contact us, and we'd love to get you plugged in. And a lot of nonprofits that we work with are always looking for more volunteers, are always looking for more help, and a lot of times we're able to just connect people with them directly. So we try and help that, and other organizations like Dana and Philanthropy Delaware and DCF and United Way are doing the same. So we try and help them out as much as we can. So.
Yeah, definitely a resource. You guys are definitely a resource to so many people. And I did see a lot of information after that about Do More 24. But I did get to tune in and see some of the live streams that were happening, which I thought were really, really cool. Talk a little bit about Do More 24 in advance for next year so people can know how to become a part of that.
Yeah, so the event obviously takes place over 24 hours, but there's a lot of lead-in time to that. So we're trying to encourage a lot of nonprofits to, for example, like it would be great if we could put together some sort of statewide benefit concert and coordinate this with a number of the performing arts groups, and then that way they can sort of take that as their piece of it and hopefully raise some money and raise some awareness through that, and then everything could be concentrated on the website, leading up to it or on that day, and say, hey, today we're beaming in, and this 15 minutes is going to be, a performance from Del Shakes or something, and this 15 minutes is going to be a performance from, Opera Delaware or the Grand, and you could really spotlight different artists, over the course of 24 hours. And I know there's a lot of interest also in figuring out how to do like a virtual gaming. So hopefully, we've been working with Influencers Lab Media, and Malcolm and Nudie are great over there, and I know they're involved with Futures First Gaming, and hopefully we'll be able to do something really cool with them in March as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think if anybody's got any ideas, we're always open to hearing them and seeing how to help execute on them. And certainly in the nonprofit space, there's a lot of ways, and a lot of them need help right now. And so I would encourage anybody who supports any nonprofit, to reach out to them. Just go to their website, and you could go to the dgives.org website and find a whole list. There's probably 300 or 400 nonprofits on there that you can connect to them through that website and just say, hey, I'd like to help. How can I help? And sometimes they need your money, sometimes they need your network, and a lot of times it's, people for their birthdays, for example, they'll create Facebook fundraisers, and that's an easy way to help sometimes. And other times it's creating something, hey, I want to go run a marathon around my house or neighborhood, and I'm going to do this for, I'm going to run the marathon, and every mile, if you can donate $10, and that person would then, kind of facilitate that fundraising. And I know there's a older guy, probably in his 90s, did this earlier in the year for some UK nonprofit, and he's just some 90-year-old veteran running around in his backyard, and his neighbor, who was probably in their 20s, is just streaming this on Facebook, and the guy raised like $1 million for some whatever the UK veterans nonprofit was. But there's elements of that here that are done throughout the states, and so it's just finding something that you're passionate about, and trying to figure out an interesting way to make it go viral. And not everything goes viral, obviously, but it's the effort that counts, and certainly people are creative and they want to help, and I would say, if the easiest thing anybody can do right now is just call the blood bank. There's always a need for blood. You can go right to the blood bank's website, set up a time, donate blood or donate plasma or platelets. I mean, not everybody can donate blood, but many can, and certainly that's an easy way that anybody can give back. So that's just one example.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And please do make sure that you get me some of that marketing materials or information about the 2 upcoming events we talked about.
I will.
Disseminate that to our viewers and audience. I had a great time with you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always great to catch up and talk a little bit about what we're doing, and certainly, please keep us in mind if you need anything else. And I know we talked about other things other times, so I can't wait to catch up again. So.
Yeah, and also before you get out of here, just let people know where they can follow Spur Impact, Mill Summit, you, if they wanted to, and keep up with what you have going on.
Yeah, so I'd say on our social media, at Spur Impact, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you can find us there, and same at Mill Summit. So those are the primary. We try and share as much as we can over those different platforms, and you can just search Spur Impact or Mill Summit, and they should pop up. And I have a Twitter. You can follow me. I just tend to retweet stuff at Vincent, but a lot of times I'm just retweeting things that I'm seeing, or from the Mill Summit or Spur Impact. So I'd say the follow at Spur Impact, follow at Mill Summit. If you want to see some random retweets of cats or something, I guess you could follow me. But there's a lot of great people out there, and we try and spotlight as many as we can on those social media platforms. So I would encourage, you can always like and follow any of those social media handles, and the more the merrier.
Thank you so much, Charlie.
Thanks, India. This has been great. Thanks for having me.